really sound like anything. It just sounds like music. And that's what I loved about this. I love the simplicity of the J2. I really love the AK4493 J2 a lot. To a point where I honestly just have no desire to look elsewhere. That's where it's important to have different DACs and different sound signatures. The stock 4499 sounds freaking fantastic. You think about the time and investment Gino had to do to re-engineer the J2 to integrate it and make it sound fantastic. Overall, and I'll reiterate this point because I think it's an important one, it doesn't sound warmer, it just sounds smoother. The reason I feel that I wanted to talk about the GESHELLI products was because I think they are outstanding value. Hello everyone, again this is the Tone Deaf Monk. Today is the USA special. That's right, though there'll be some chi-fi in here as well. Today is not about IMs at all, and if they were, they would be also American built. My neighbors to the south. This is what some of the gear I was using to test my review today on some GESHELLI labs. And these are Empire Ears Legend Evos. A little over 3K for those bad boys. Absolutely phenomenal. Upcoming review. Moving on. Let's talk a little bit about why I got here. First of all, I've had my GESHELLI Labs JNOG J2 ever since Cheap Audio Man and Zeos was gushing over these little DACs, and I thought I'd give it a try. I love the fact, a couple things, its ability to customize, right? I wanted a blue one, and just some of the minimalistic approach, made in the US approach, really kind of pulled on my heartstrings, and I've loved it. I've had it over, I don't know, a couple years now, and I absolutely loved it. One day, a fellow named John Burson reached out to me on Hi-Fi Guides and said, hey, would you be interested in putting a couple of our V6V Vivids inside your J2? And at that point, I knew that I couldn't do that because my version was not socketed. But since Mike Bruce pioneered and worked with GESHELLI, and they ended up making a socketed version for sale. So I ended up sending this one back, and I ended up picking up just before that a second one local, which was also socketed already, but it didn't have USB. And I like the added feature of USB. So I phoned up, I talked to Sherry, and again, what a wonderful experience. And I packed them up and I shipped them down there to Florida. Now, then there was also a rumor mill going around that there was a new prototype in the works, and that was using the new dual chip AK chip, the 44, what was it, a 4491? I think that's the controller chip, and then the 4499EX is the actual DAC chip. So that's I asked, and they were accommodating for allowing me to pay the upgrades for the USB, for the socketed version, and I also bought some Sparkos op amps, some SS3602s on their website, which I'll talk about in a bit as well. And so all of that kind of happened, and they finally came back, and I've had them for over a little bit week here, and I've been doing some intense listening to multiple things. So I only have a couple different pairs of headphones. My modified Hi-Fiman 400Is with the huge grill, open back, lovely. Planar headphones. And I'm not a big headphone guy, I'll tell you straight off that one. They make I don't like the pressure on my head, and they make my ears sweat. So there you go. And my wife complains about the sound. She thinks I'm listening to it too loud, which I probably am. Because it's open back, they can hear what I hear pretty much. So I stick to IMs, and I prefer that personally, and the portability. So anyway, I want to talk just a little bit, if you're not familiar with who GESHELLI Labs are. First of all, it's not Chi-Fi, and it's a family. I work for a family-owned, family-run company, and you can get good and bad in that experience. I fortunately work for one of the good ones. And I can tell you, GESHELLI is also one of these solid family-run, family-value companies. And that's important, especially being in this industry and being a YouTuber and dealing with some of the manufacturers and the distributors. There's some shady shit that goes on, honestly, and the back end. If you only knew half of it, nobody talks about it, but it's pretty ugly. Where every one of my experiences so far, from my initial reach out to GESHELLI and buying my initial J2, and customizing the shell, I mean, they're just wonderful. Who is GESHELLI Labs, first of all? So husband and wife. Sherry is the boss. Always going to be absolutely. Sorry, Gino. And Gino is her husband. Also the engineer, and the magic happens in his brain as well. And Sherry runs the company. I think it does about 15 other jobs as well. I think she does the powder coating and chief cook and bottle washer as well. Since 2016, Gino kind of made his first little DAC. He has a huge passion for audio, and that really comes through in the sound. You can tell that there's thought and care that went into the not only to the design of this products, but the sound. So Melbourne, Florida is where these guys are. So 6 hours from me, straight north, pretty much. It was kind of interesting. I talked to Sherry a couple weeks ago, and we were shooting the shit about COVID and how that because it affected everyone's lives, and especially companies. And what I found really, and I had a feeling because companies like mine and what they do is you're rooted in a community. If you're a family run, you have great values. And if you're rooted in a community, what happens is you don't ask if you can help. You just do what you can do to help your community in times like this, And in certain cases, I knew because I knew GESHELLI also did their fabrication for their little fiberglass or plexiglass templates. They have a laser cutter to keep everything, cost downs in home. And Sherry told me that they pivoted and they started turning out face shields and stuff like that to help out in the community and help keep people safe. And for me, that goes a really long way to showing the core values of these people in this company. So full on respect. So. And it shows their true character, honestly. And it's truly a family operation. I think dad's involved, brother, and look at their naming system. Half the time when you're buying a Chi-Fi something or other, any gear, you have no. I think I told this story once before about Alpine Car Audio, where their model numbers were all over the board, and in one drunk honest session from CEO Alpine Japan, after many shots, I'm not going to say where it was. How did you guys come up with names? Oh, we just throw darts at a dartboard. And it's like, no shit, no really, yeah, no. They changed that after years, but I couldn't believe it, and it made sense. It's like, well, okay, that totally makes sense. I get it now. What a stupid thing to do, but hey, they changed and they got better. So the GESHELLI stuff is named after family members. It's cool. Anyway, let's talk about what you can do with the J2. And I also then they gave me a E2 to try out, and I haven't heard much about the amps, but I'm gonna talk about that in a bit. But let's talk about the J2 first. So mine came back with now a socketed version with the USB. And without the socketed version, you can choose two. You can choose the ES stack, the 9038, or you can choose the AK4493, and that's the one that I had. So again, that whole thing pivoted also to when the factory burned down for AKM, right? So they were geared up to do ready to go, burned down, pivoted, did the J2 originally with a different ES DAC, and then eventually went to the 9038. And then when the supply started up again with AKM, then Gino re-engineered it for the 4493. And that's the one I chose. Now, they start off at very reasonable prices, like $249 for the base unit. If you want the socketed version, what is the socketed version? Well, there's the op amps that can be changed. Now, the stock ones are the most primo Texas Instruments version, the OPA 1656. Nothing was cheaped out here. So does it sound, and I'll get into sound later, that's at the base price. If you want the socketed version that you can swap out the op amps, you have to pay $10 more, which is, again, super reasonable. If you want the USB, add $50. You're now up to what, $309 for the socketed version. And if you want, you can choose your aluminum case in that price and multiple different colors. And again, I got a custom color, and she didn't charge me anything else. That was, thank you. Starving student. Wood case you can also get, which, I mean, look at the market. You know, the shit products, so many that these things also compete with, right? Topping. It is what it is. You buy it. That's what it is. That's how it comes. Here they're saying, you know what? You can customize it to you. So pretty cool. These aren't going to be for everybody. I mean, they don't come with remote controls. They don't have that. It's minimalistic, and that's honestly what appealed to me a lot about that. The inputs on it, I also thought were brilliant, right? So 2 front, 2 rear, and possibly another 3rd rear. So the front has a optical input and also has a coax input. So for me, when I plug in, this is a Ibasso DX90 that I plug in coax from here directly into the front, and it boom, boom. And if it was on the back, I would have to, reach into my stack and stuff like that. And it's on, and I'll show you a picture later. Not that easy to get to. So, and then the USB, I plugged into the back. So it's really convenient to have the inputs on the front and the back. It just allows you to have flexibility. I really like that feature. Again, it resonated with me. It may not be for you, but it was a selling feature for me, for sure. The Amanero USB, again, Gino chose this because it had excellent properties. The driver, you download, just go Amanero USB driver for your laptop, works perfectly. Can do DSD up to 512, so there's no limitation on this bad boy. What else does it do? It has 7 little... Don't laugh at me, because I like this little shit. And it has 7 different lights. I call it mood lights, right? I'm in a mood, I press the blue button. If I'm feeling royalty, I press the purple button. Feeling danger, press the red button. So 7 different little LEDs for lighting up the inside. And because the plexiglass front and rears, it just adds some pop to it. Is it showing my personality too? Yeah, probably. And with the 2 different stacks, I have the white one down in my listening chair downstairs, and with the orange faceplates, looks super cool. The outputs in this J2 have balanced outputs. So there's XLR outs and there's single-ended RCAs, and they work simultaneously as well, which is a really cool feature. And I use that on both this stack and the one downstairs. Now, you have the option of also buying Sparkos's op amps for $79 each, and if you're going to do the XLR version, you'll need 2, and if you're doing single-ended, you'll need 1. Alternately, I'll explain this, if you can just go buy Sparkos op amps from the States as well directly. GESHELLI doesn't sell through their website. They're just kind of doing you a favor if you want the 3602, but if you really want to go cray-cray, which I am going to listen to Mike Bruce and take his advice and spend, what, $258 for a set of two sets of duals with adapters. They're $126 US a piece for the SS2590. I haven't heard it yet. And quite honestly, to talk about the Sparkos that I bought, they actually never made it. They were pre-installed in my J2, but since Burson sent me these V6V Vivids, that's what I put in there in the XLR in one and single-ended in the other. The 3602 Sparkos ended up going into my X-Duo XD05 semi-portable, transportable beast, and I loved it, and that's where they stayed. And so I can't give you any sound impressions with the Sparkos, but I'm sure others are going to be doing that. Now, how did I... Well, yeah, let's go into some sound. But first, how did I get here? Well, on the desktop here, when I was doing my sound impressions, so I have the Topping A90D with remote control, and I was using the XLR inputs stock, right, with the TA op amps, and the other side was using single-ended Burson. You can volume match, remember A, remember B, close your eyes, listen to some, phenomenal gear, and do your listening impressions. And I know, because I've had this J2 for a long time, and the Topping A90D, it's a wonderful, wonderful pairing. Absolutely. It is, the J2 is super clean. I love the highs. I think it's but these two pieces of gear are very uncolored. I don't think there's a whole lot of warmth being added or coloration to anything, and the two together are magical for me. The stage is wide, it's deep, it's detailed. I really love the AK4493 J2 a lot, to a point where I honestly just have no desire to look elsewhere, to gear up. Right? I bought the X-Duo XD05 because it had the latest, greatest ES stack, and I needed something to balance off. That being said, your first biggest difference to your gear, that your music that you're listening to through your gear, right, is, first of all, it's going to be the biggest difference, in my opinion, is your end, right? What's producing the music, turning it into what we hear. And so, the way I look at it is, if I had $1,000 to blow, would I keep chasing butterflies and trying to upgrade my DAC to this, that, or my amp? No, I would probably put it into transducers, right? That would be first. Second thing that really, for me, changes the sound more than anything else is ear tips, right? Getting a proper seal, depth, stage, all that matters for me. Then it's and that's the way I do my listening impressions as well. So it's you're first doing a review on something, and then you're getting it dialed in, you're getting your ear tips, and then for me it's source. So, and that's where it's important to have different DACs and different sound signatures. If you've never seen one of these, it's called an E1DA. It uses a 9038 ES DAC, and it is, I've never heard anything more linear, extremely clean and uncolored. It is about as pure a DAC as you can get. Now, it's also incredibly honest, and the problem with this little guy, for some, it's too honest, and it's too brutal on them, and it's too much. And sometimes you need a little bit of coloration where that has none at all. And then I also have CSS, Truth Your Shiro, and the Shanling UP5. And then, of course, you have your other sources, right? So DX90, again, ES DAC, Shanling, M6U, using an AKM also, 4493. That's a very warm, smooth sounding DAC, where this is more, again, on the honest side. And the Truth Your Shiro is kind of in the middle. So, and then the XD05, again, using the ES. I find overall, this is my take of DAC chips in a generalization, okay? Generalization. I find ES more resolving. I hate to use that word. I think it's less. Yeah, no, I'll use that word. More resolving. Sometimes it sounds cleaner. Sometimes it sounds more forward in the vocals. Where if you, and then there's more neutrality gear, and I think the J2 and the topping A90D follow into that signature. On here too, there's also an X Duo MT604 tube hybrid that I also use as well. So, and then there's an iFi stack. So we're getting off of the GESHELLI, and this was the long-winded version of that. So how I did it, switching channel match volume wise, and listen to standard output and take my impressions. I didn't need to take my impressions. I know this gear so well and how it sounds and doesn't sound. It doesn't really sound like anything. It just sounds like music, and that's a huge compliment. Then I tried the Burson V6V. They're $85 each. Again, if you're doing single-ended. Plus, you'll need a $10 little adapter to bend over because they're freaking massively high. And did the same thing. So, again, critical listening, A/B, with and without the Burson. And it took me a long time, I'll be quite honest. I was expecting more. I was expecting a transitional difference. And I didn't get it. And at first I was kind of like, and then I calmed down and waited until, I had no distractions, and did some more critical listening. And it took a long time for me to actually hear a difference. It is incredibly subtle. Very, very subtle. But in the end, when I did listen, switching back and forth, I picked my preference in the regular J2 4493 with the Burson 80% of the time. that I preferred the sound. And what the Burson does is it just adds a slight more weight to vocals. The stage just a tiny bit wider, and sound is just a tiny bit more open. Is it worth $95? I'm going to use that phrase again, chasing butterflies. You get to a certain level of gear, and easy to tell a $10 IM from a $50 IM to a $300 IM to a $600 IM, and then it gets muddy for the value. I mean, it doesn't go up exponentially; it goes up micrometrically. It's so small, right? Chasing butterflies. That is the perfect phrase, right? It's you're chasing after something that is attainable, but your return on your investment is probably very, very low, and it really comes down to, is it worth it for you? Like you see some of those pictures with guys with like stacks with 16 different things, right? To me, it's a turnoff. I just think you're trying to listen to gear and not trying to listen to music. And that's what I loved about this. I loved the simplicity of the J2, and I loved the pairing with the topping A90D. Now, let's talk about the second DAC that I got in, and that is the soon-to-be released AK4499EX. That you'll also have the option. It'll only come in the socketed version, so J2C. I think the upgrade charge is going to be around 175 US. And from my understanding from Sherry, that chip is incredibly more money, expensive. It's also the dual chip system. And for really that upgrade, you think about the time and investment Gino had to do to re-engineer the J2 to integrate it and make it sound fantastic. So, and I know GESHELLI doesn't try to add a house sound. There's no house sound per se. It is making it as open and colorless as possible. And in this case, between the 4499 and the 4493, there is a large difference in sound. Is it an upgrade over the 4493? Well, I'll tell you the difference that I heard. So stage is wider. It is a bit more open. Bottom end had more depth and texture for sure. It overall, and I'll reiterate this point because I think it's an important one, it doesn't sound warmer, it just sounds smoother, right? So I don't think it's adding coloration into the mix. It's not a warmer sounding DAC, it is a smoother sounding DAC. And it's a vocal beast when it comes to if your preference is male vocals, then the 4499. If your preference is female vocals, which I love, 4493. So that's the thing. When I came to this, conclusions is really, is the 4499 an upgrade? And for me, it is, because when I received the E2 Irish amp, and I did an A/B with the 4493 and the 4499. So the 4499 is using the dual Burson in the XLR, because the E2 only takes XLR as input. Now, what was the difference with the Burson in the new one? The same as it was with a very, very small difference. The stock AK4499 sounds freaking fantastic with the stock op amps, honestly. Until I get these other Sparkos in, at 200, it's almost going to be $300, 350 Canadian for me. And I just don't know if it's worth it from listening to the Burson versus the stock. I don't think I would rather, I am going to do it when I get some extra. But I would rather buy another IM that to review, quite honestly, than spending any more money on op amps and until I can hear a big difference. That's a big chunk of change. But when I paired the 4499 with the E2 amp, there is some kind of magic that happens between those two devices. That DAC with that amp is a way better combination than that DAC with the A90D. So that's why my original A90D, or my original J2 4493, is paired with my topping, because again, that had synergy. Like I couldn't. It's magical for me. I mean, that stack and the stack downstairs, they both amalgamate together perfectly. So I feel pretty blessed that I have some of this gear that I bought that, and I pick up a lot of stuff on the used market, like that second J2 and the i5 stack and the, X Duo. Oh no, bought that one new, but, oh yeah. So I forgot to say that too. So one of the things that I like about the J2 as well is it has the dual outputs that work simultaneously. So in this case, I'm sending the XLR out into the X Duo amp, which only takes XLR balanced inputs for the tube. And so then I also have a second amp that I can listen to right off my desk. So either the A90D, which is super linear and clean, or the little bit more colored tube version of the X Duo MT604. Same as downstairs. So then the second output, so the main outs go to the E2 XLR, because it only takes XLR, and the RCAs go out to a Loxy P20 little tube amp. So again, I'm very humbled in the fact that I have this stuff, and my wife lets me buy it, that I have this to listen to and make my impressions and share them with you. So I'm very thankful, honestly, on that. And it doesn't it registers with me that $10 for some people of you watching this video. I don't want to sound pretentious, please. I'm not that person. And I understand a $10 IM is a lot of money in some countries. And I get that. I really do. So the reason I feel that I wanted to talk about the GESHELLI products was because I think they are outstanding value, right? I love the values of the company and the service. You put it all together. Like, you could spend thousands and thousands of dollars more for a DAC or an amp. But at $249, I think it's one of the most reasonably priced, high performing products out there. So, from my heart, I'm telling you, I think this is great value and great sounding gear that if you're in the market for a desktop solution, please take a look. That's why I'm sharing this and doing this video with you. Just to sum up my J2 experience, and just to share my thoughts on the new upcoming option where you can choose the 4499 chip. I think would really depend on what you want out of your end game. That's the beautiful thing about this GESHELLI Labs J2. Really, what kind of configuration are you looking for? What kind of sound signature are you looking for? And that's the beautiful thing about having choice. I think for me, I think the original J2 is best value. If you're looking for something on the more resolving side and you're not looking for something with the ultimate smoothness that AKM brings. Where if you're looking for the ultimate smoothness that AKM brings, then the 4499 upgrade will be for you. But again, then now, and it's going to hit top tier performance. Both do, in my opinion. But for me, I think the true winner is the original JNOG J2 socketed. So spend the $10 more, add $50, spend the USB. I think that's good. That's good. Good place to put your money. Anyway, this is Tone Deaf Monk. I'm out. Thank you. To conclude, would I buy the new 4499? Well, I think if it depends really on, just like my stacks, what are you looking for? What is the rest of your chain, right? Are you looking for something smoother in the AKM? I think I just had a Hibby R6 Pro 2, and I sold it off not because of the sound quality. The sound quality was very good in that, also using 4499. And technically it uses a newer chip than the Shanling M6U. But the button placement drove me insane. So that was the first massive strike against it. Though I love the sound quality, I actually prefer the slightly smoother version of this. If this would be like the 4499 J2, and the Hibby would be more like the 4493 J2. That's the kind of how I equated it to. And since the E2 amp and the J2 4499 with the slightly different Burson V6V are a phenomenal combo for that. The ESS DAC and the XD05 for me adds a different flavor, and of course, you have your different, if you can, your different dongles and DACs. So is it worth it? It would be worth it if you were looking for that particular kind of sound signal. Again, it doesn't add any warmth or coloration. It is just the way it sounds, and it sounds very clean. Pair it with, your amp of your choice, and away you go. And again, for me, I found that the J2 with the A90D in the original 4493 was the best pairing. The 4499, the new one that's coming out, pairs extremely well with the E2. That's what I found. So I now have two different stacks that are slightly different sound, and I enjoy them both. But and if I pick a synergy, if I found a synergy like these Empire Ears Legend Evos, phenomenal. I am. They better be for $3,000. How does this sound on the X Duo? Well, they sound good on everything, but they sound the absolute best downstairs on the 4499 and the E2 GESHELLI amp. Absolute magic. I had to use a little Wi-Fi adapter because of the impedance must be incredibly low on these things. Never really looked, but it was the first time ever it was actually giving me a little bit of noise floor, and put in the Wi-Fi, dial it up to ultra, and it completely eliminates any noise floor. That little device works. If you don't have one, pick one up. Highly recommend it. Anyway, this is the Tone Deaf Monk. I hope I've shared some stuff. If you were looking at maybe considering the GESHELLI products to help you in your decision, in your journey, with my impressions from the things that I've listened to, and I hope it's helpful to you. So thanks very much again for watching my channel. This is the Tone Deaf Monk, and I'm out for now.